This week, we came up with 8 different zero effort or no effort ways of improving motivation. And we kind of use this as an exercise to really think about what makes us motivated, what is motivation, things like that. So we want to talk about that. At the end of the episode, we're going to announce a challenge. So stick around for that. But Mike, why don't you tell us about motivation? What are some of your thoughts on it?
Well, this is it probably would have made more sense to do this at the start of this season since this is the season of motivation, but I couldn't figure it out, and it's taken a few weeks of trying to think about motivation itself to even come up with an idea of what is it? What how do we even think about it? What I need is a mental model for motivation. I need some idea of it in my head that I can reason about. And I can take that and think, okay, if I do this today, how's that going to affect my motivation? If I wake up on time or I eat this meal or anything, like I need some model to start making choices and trying to figure out how to make it better. So Wikipedia actually has an awesome definition of motivation. I don't remember it word for word, but it's something like the forces inside the agent that drive it towards different goals or something like that. Basically, the forces inside the agent, which sounds creepy as hell, and I really like it. But that to me is a good definition. It's the forces within you that drive you towards things. Like that's motivation for me. And it's not the same thing as discipline. I think those wires get crossed a lot, and I'm not that interested in discipline. Or that's not what we're focused on for this season. I mean, we might be interested in it down the road. But this idea that you just white knuckle your way through doing really tough things that are worth it in the end, and that's not what we're after. I don't want to just bite the bullet and go jog 10 miles at 5 in the morning every morning because that's going to make me healthy. I want to. I want there to be forces inside me that push me in the direction of doing stuff, not because I just feel like I need to, but that I just want to. That there's some project that I've wanted to do forever. Oh, well, I feel the urge to do it now, or I want to play piano more, and I just get up and think, yeah, let's play piano. That's what I want to do today. Does that feel like the right vector for what we want to get into?
Yeah, that sounds good. For me, when I think motivation, it's really vague and doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. It's just sort of I don't know. I think there's so many different types of motivation, or I don't know. I've never really tried to define it or think about it that
And
much.
there are there are different models for motivation. There are different definitions. There's I'm not saying that this is the one true way of looking at it. I'm saying this is the way I want to look at it for now. Is I want to define motivation as the driving forces inside of me that push me towards uh non-trivial stuff. Things that I think are going to lead to satisfaction in the long term. I might feel the desire to scroll through Instagram for the 10 billionth time today. I'm not calling that motivation. It's a desire to do something, but it's something stupid. I want a desire to do something that is rewarding and long term, and fitness is falls into that category, or working on music, or on anything that I'm genuinely interested in or want to learn about. Like that's motivation to me, is just the force that pushes me in that direction. That's my definition for it for now.
So, have you figured out what makes you motivated? Or
No, I mean, well, partly. Uh, that's what I'm after. And yeah, I'm trying to piece together what are the elements that go into that. I have one. I have a few actually. So you've been sick before, right? As a
yes,
human
is that a
being,
real yes? Okay.
yeah, you've been sick. I mean, and I mean sick, like flu, stuck in bed. So no matter how you define motivation, you could say comfortably that when you are very sick, you have none. You are you're barely motivated to stay alive. There isn't any. And part of that is, in order for motivation to work at all, you need energy. You need arousal, to use the more awkward term for it, or alertness. Like, you got to be awake and feel energy inside of you. And that just has to be there. And there are some days where, for different reasons that I'm slowly starting to figure out, I'll wake up and go through the day and I don't have that. I feel lethargic and bad. I feel somewhere on the spectrum of, very awake and alert to feeling sick. It's like more towards that end. And it doesn't matter what else you do. It doesn't matter how you think about things or how focused you are or anything. If you just have zero energy, motivation doesn't happen. So part of the solution for motivation is just getting to where you feel energetic. Like there's a motive force inside of you. All right, before we get too up in the clouds here, let's get into the list a little bit and we'll talk through how this stuff fits. My number one, or zero effort motivation, is to view sunlight first thing when you wake up.
Well, you've been doing this a lot recently, right? I mean, I think you mentioned this a couple
on the recommendation of chronobiology and neuroscience and all of that stuff.
Isn't it funny that you have to quote neuroscience and chronobiology just to walk outside in the morning? Like,
well, yeah.
It's like you're just going outside in the morning.
I know, but at the same time, there's a million. I mean, does that matter?
I don't know. I don't even know what I'm saying. It's
no.
Just funny.
I know what you're saying, even if you don't. I know what you're saying.
You're just walking outside.
I know,
but yeah.
But here's why I think it's so important. Well, first off, it's doesn't take any significant effort, right? And that's what we're kind of after here. But your circadian rhythm, we've talked about this a bunch, but we tend to think of your circadian rhythm as something about sleep. You got to fix your circadian rhythm so you can go to sleep at night, which obviously is vitally important, right? For sure. But there's a flip side to that, which is getting your circadian rhythm dialed in means that the appropriate sleep hormones and the state of relaxation, everything is supposed to happen at the right time. Or you're relaxing, your body's internal clock is relaxing, your melatonin is being released, your cortisol levels are dropping, all this stuff. You get sleepy, you go to sleep, and then hopefully you sleep really well. You get into deep sleep in the first part of the night. You're not waking up a lot or being restless. Like your stress hormones are very low. That's the sleep part. But the flip side of it is that you want the exact opposite to happen during the day, where you actually do get stress hormones when you wake up, and you get adrenaline, and you get all of these other things that ramp you up during the day. And fixing it is as much for sleep as it is for wakefulness, in that, again, to be motivated, you need energy. You got to be awake and ready to do stuff. There's more to it than that, but that's like the main ingredient. That's the horse you're riding on, is your alertness. So if you can get your circadian rhythm dialed in, what should happen, and I know this for one of the first times in my life, because I've had it in a pretty good state for a while now, is that when you wake up, what's supposed to happen is that you start waking up, where, your wake up time happens and you get up and you start moving around and you start feeling energetic, like you want to do stuff, like your eyes start to get wider and your brain starts to move. That's what's supposed to happen. And that's happening because hormones are being released and your circadian rhythm is saying, yeah, it's time to go chase down a wild animal and eat it and do human stuff. That's supposed to happen in the morning. So there's a lot of many things that go into fixing your circadian rhythm. I think probably the most important is going to bed at a consistent time and waking up at a consistent time, but that's kind of hard to do. it's not that hard to just step out the door in the morning. And it seems like viewing sunlight first thing in the morning is a very good way of setting your circadian clock when you wake up. And that's a pretty low effort way of starting to get that dialed in. And that I think is one of the most key parts of getting that energy part of motivation.
I've been doing this. Well, I've started doing this. I've been doing it every day for maybe 2 weeks now.
Okay.
And I'll walk outside. I'm outside within the first 10, 15 minutes of every morning, drinking my coffee and looking at the sky. And I think it's not like an instant, oh, wow, I am super awake now because I just saw the sky or something. In fact, I don't know if I even notice anything instant happening other than it's really pleasant and nice to be outside.
Right.
But I don't know if that's the only thing that's making me feel better, but that whole morning process of going outside and just has been really nice. It seems like the effect kind of comes just for the rest of the day. I don't know if it's not like this instant, shot of a drug or something when you look at the sunlight. It's just, I don't know. I haven't noticed like an instant thing, but
I also haven't noticed an instant thing. I think it helps to wake you up, where that just getting a lot of bright light helps wake you up. But the point isn't so much that. When you can splash cold water on your face, you can do whatever, you can drink coffee, that'll wake you up. But the point is trying to dial in the clock so that you start getting over time. It's a temporal problem where you do this once, nothing really happens. Maybe you get the short term, okay, I'm kind of awake now, I saw a bright light. But you do it for one day, who cares? You do it for a week or 2 weeks, it starts to matter, where every morning at the same time you start getting this shot of adrenaline where you're just starting to become awake. And along those lines, I think for anybody, if that doesn't happen to you in the morning, something's wrong. If you don't feel that spike of energy starting pretty soon after you wake up, you're just groggy and lethargic and you're kind of grinding through your day, something's wrong. You got to fix your circadian rhythm. If that doesn't help, you work on your sleep. There could be sleep apnea or some other issue to look into, but like that's supposed to happen.
We're probably getting off topic, but I think if you're wondering what you should do when you first wake up, then that's bad. I think you should have, like I wrote out my morning routine and I just have it on the wall. So if I wake up in the morning and like when you first wake up, you can't think well, like you just woke up. So your brain's kind of dumb. So just look at the list, be like, oh okay, I got to go do that thing. And then you just go do it and you start going through this routine. And then before you know it, you're wide awake and you're feeling motivated. So taking away that wondering of what to do, I think is always good. Okay, want to hear mine?
Yeah.
Well, first off, we did these the filter was no effort or zero effort. So it almost feels silly to be presenting these, but I think we do actually think they work. It just feels silly. But anyway, my number one is make a to-don't list, which is
right.
Make a list of things that you don't want to do anymore. For me, years ago when I started learning, art and really trying to dedicate myself to this thing, I crossed off TV. I brag about that all the time. But I got rid of the TV, which changed my life at the time because I was always, binge watching shows and doing what everybody does.
You definitely have the gene of television.
Of just watching a ton of television.
Like you're the type who can pound through 15 hours of TV.
Oh yeah. A couple of years ago, I watched all of The Walking Dead in like a month or something, like all 9 seasons. I just canceled everything else and just, anyway. Yeah, make it to don't list, because I think my theory is that if you are left to your own devices, you are motivated to do the things that matter most to you. And 9 times out of 10, the things that are keeping you from being motivated are literally just distractions. They're just things that come up or just random things that don't matter. Um, like when we were doing the no phone challenge, I felt really motivated all the time. And it's just because I didn't have something extra there sort of distracting me. And I think if you just start trying to weed out the things that are in the way, then you can kind of see clearly. It's really simple. But like I caught myself spending like way too much time on Reddit. And so I just decided I would never use Reddit again. And I haven't since. I haven't missed it at all. And my life is 100 times better because of it. Mm-hmm. So just thinking about little things that I can get rid of completely have really helped me. I don't know. What do you not do? Or do you...
Well, Reddit is a good example. I put a block on Reddit's IP addresses on my router. So I just can't see it anymore.
I tried to do that.
Really?
Sorry, I tried to do that with like YouTube and Reddit before, and what would happen? Like I had a lock, so it would lock if I use it for more than 10 minutes or whatever. Yeah. But what would happen is I just go and unlock it. I spend like 20 minutes trying to unlock it and use it anyway.
Okay, this is a different episode for a different day, but I just want to say as kind of a general message to anybody who might be listening, there have been some efforts in recent years to give human beings some tools on trying to limit things like this. We all kind of get that social media and these infinite scroll sites and whatnot are very distracting, not good for you. So we've seen stuff like screen time show up on iOS, and there's things now like my phone has a Zen mode where you can lock it for 20 minutes, things like that. There's a bunch of site blocker things to where you can, it locks you out of Reddit, like a browser extension. I think they pretty much all get it wrong. It's a bold statement from me that I think I know better than Apple and all of these people, but pretty confident I do in this case. Here's how I figured out Reddit, because Reddit's that's mine. I don't have a Facebook. I don't really waste time.
You're saying Reddit is your...
Yeah, that's the one that
pit of despair. Yeah.
Right. So I've tried all those things. They don't work. And there's a few reasons why. One is that sometimes you need it. At least for me, sometimes I actually need to get on there.
You really need Reddit.
Yeah, no, I really do. Like I'm searching for a solution to a problem or something like that, and this, somebody, you type it in Google and the search result comes up where the first line is, hey, I have, my computer is shutting off after 10 minutes when I plug in my AMD graphics card. Yeah. What do I do? Yeah. And it says solved. And then you're like, the answer's in there. I got to see it. That's part of the problem. Basically, no matter what you do, if you put things where they're blocked, if they ever become unblocked, then you're kind of back to where you started. Like I don't think that's the right way to do it. I don't think having something that nags you and says, hey, you've been on Reddit for 20 minutes, you should stop. That just like adds guilt to your already messed up experience of wasting time. Here's what I think needs to happen. What I did for me, I put a block on Reddit I have sort of a fancy router setup, and this isn't something that every person could probably do without a lot of effort, but all my devices are blocked from viewing Reddit. My desktop PC, which I'm on right now, my phone, my laptop, all that stuff. Cannot view Reddit, and it's very cumbersome to unlock. But I have a laptop, a ThinkPad T450S, that is in the basement. And it's a crappy laptop. It's very old, but it's in the basement. That is allowed to view Reddit. So if I need it, I go down into the basement, open up the laptop, get onto Reddit, and view what I need to. Problem perfectly solved. Basically, Reddit is annoying to get to. I have to physically get up and go into the basement and view it down there. And so I just never do. You can't form a habit around that unless you're really messed up. I'm not getting bored at my computer going, let me go walk down to the basement, boot up that laptop, browse Reddit for a while. Like, it just doesn't happen. But if I really genuinely need to, then I can.
I like that. Yeah.
Basically, if getting hooked on this stuff is kind of like gambling, just put the slot machine across a river where you got to swim across the river to pull the lever. Like, make it not easy. And if it isn't easy, then it doesn't get built into a habit loop anymore. It just doesn't.
Yeah. Well, okay, what's your next one? I could keep talking about to don't lifts, but I think you get the idea. I really think they're okay. Last thing about the to don't list, we have like in society and whatever, we have really easy ways of getting things into our houses. You know, like we go out and we buy something, it comes into the house. Like you're always bringing stuff into the house. The only thing that goes out is trash. But we don't have a good way of getting rid of cool things or, you know, stuff we don't really need anymore, but it's not trash.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you can go make a trip to the thrift store or whatever, but there's no regular system of getting rid of things. I mean, people, of course, have created some, but there's just no real common ways of getting rid of things or constantly reevaluating, you know, what you need and what you don't. And I think people are always talking about to-do lists and, you know, all these things you need to get done, but you kind of rarely think about the things that you need to get rid of. So I think making a to don't list is a good exercise. But anyway, okay, what's your number 2?
Okay. Kind of along the same line, since this is where we're at, I was going to list this one later. I'm going to bump it up just for conversational flow. Don't carry your phone with you unless you genuinely need to for whatever reason. We did a whole thing on this. I can't get over this. That week, that challenge we did of don't unplug your phone was so dramatic for me. I'm kind of bending the rules. This really isn't no effort because I mean, you don't have to, it's like you're physically exerting yourself, but it takes a little bit of desire to leave your phone. But my God, it made such a difference.
I don't think anyone, well, sorry to cut you off, but I think people just assumed that we use our phones a lot and they don't. So this doesn't apply to them. And I don't know how to get that point across, that we hardly ever use our phones, and yet this was life-changing.
I know.
But whatever. It's like when someone has a really cool dream, they're like, dude, I had this amazing dream. Let me tell you all about it. And you're like,
holy crap, this person's about to tell me about their dream. How do I leave?
Yeah. How do I get out? Whatever. Okay,
yeah.
Finish.
Right. Yeah, we're just two dudes saying, guys, phones are bad. And everyone else is like, yeah, we heard. Right. Here, okay, back to the motivation mental model part, because I'm the same. I've people say, hey, your phone, it's a waste of time, it's bad for you, don't use it. And I've kind of felt the same of, yeah, I guess I should also drive the speed limit and eat vegetables, but nobody's doing that. Whatever, call your grandma. Right. So on and so forth. But it started again just that week, and part of what made that week so dramatic, I think, was that I was traveling. So I was away from some of the other phone replacements like laptop and PC and that kind of thing. And that's its own problem that we still need to talk about, is how do you deal with the fact that if you're on your computer all day doing work, there's very similar problems there. But I was away from that, put the phone away, and my God, the difference was just astounding. So that started to fit into my mental model for motivation, which is, first thing, you need energy, right? And you can see it in nature. My cat sleeps for 22 hours a day, does just absolutely nothing. And then at 11 at night, for no reason, her pupils turn into anime eyes, and the murdery feeling takes over her, and she starts just racing around the house like a psychopath, attacking pillows and everything. And she's a cat. She just does what she feels. But there is this energy that hits her at a certain point, and it just makes her go nuts. That's the nature of being a cat, and it's also the nature of being a human, that you get energy at certain points in the day. That's if it's not happening, something's wrong. So you get this energy, right? And then where it goes is a very important thing to think about. If I start to feel really awake and really excited, and then I go on some YouTube rabbit hole and get sucked into dumb conspiracy theories or things, then all of my energy, that desire to take down an animal, is going into something stupid. Probably don't want to get too far down that politically fraught line of thinking, but
Well, I feel like the argument to that is, well, isn't watching YouTube and relaxing and enjoying life, like, isn't that important too? Like, you don't always want to be work, work, work.
so
But
yeah. So first thing, you get a lot of energy. And if you aren't getting a lot of energy, something is wrong and you got to fix it. So there's that. Then where it goes is very important. And I almost think of this, for me, the more energy that I have, the harder it is to direct it into something good. It's I picture it kind of like if you had a garden hose, it's not that hard to do point it in the right direction. But if you're holding a fire hose, it's very different. And it takes practice and discipline, in a sense, to get that wave of energy and then remain focused and directing it towards something that is important and meaningful. Does that make sense?
yes.
Okay.
So wait, how does this tie back into the?
Okay, how does
don't
this tie
carry
into the
your phone
phone?
around?
Yeah, all right. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, kind of. I'm trying to sort through this model, right? So it's hard. Two parts. One, my cat knows to sleep for the other 22 hours of the day. She doesn't sit there just kind of idly wandering around in a circle, wasting and not relaxing, which is what we do. At night, when you're supposed to be relaxed and your mind's supposed to be calm, you're sitting there getting angry about dumb threads on Twitter and things like that, or you're just being distracted. Like you're sinking energy and mental effort into something when you aren't supposed to be. You want the lull so that you get the spike of energy. So if all the rest of your day is spent just with these little emotional triggers and engagements on your phone, on the internet, doing stuff, then that saps that spike of energy at other points in the day when you're supposed to be, you're supposed to be charging up for those moments. So that's part of it, right? Just not sapping energy at other points in the day. The other part, all right, there's three parts to it now that I think about it. There's that. Don't pour your energy into something when you're supposed to be calm and relaxing and kind of recharging. The other is that when you get that energy, you don't want it going into something dumb. If I feel really antsy and awake and whatever, I want to practice calmly channeling that into something productive. I don't want to constantly get distracted and start wasting it somewhere else. It's stealing all of my energy for those moments in the day, right? So that's bad too. The other part is how do I put this? This is like the X factor of motivation. This is what we kind of found out during that week. There's this state of mind. This definitely falls into that category of things that are kind of hard to talk about, that don't have clear names.
Cool.
Yeah, and I haven't come up with a good name for it. At any point in the day, all the time, you get these little urges. These little, like, hey, go do a thing. Go find something interesting. Go find something novel. Let's entertain ourselves. Eat a candy bar, whatever. These little impulses that just happen all the time. And you can measure them. I actually have some ideas for maybe some experiments we can do in the future. Yeah. We'll get to that. But you find yourself with this urge to pull your phone out or open the fridge or Google something, right? Like you get these constantly. And if you always act on them, if you always just yank your phone out, scroll through Instagram or TikTok, then what happens is the impulses start to become more frequent. They start to become more intense. and they start to be more and more directed at things that have very quick payoff. So if you're constantly feeding these little impulses, you don't suddenly get the desire to clean out your gutters. You suddenly get this desire to scroll through Instagram for the 10 billionth time that day. Like, you want that really fast, instant gratification. And it's weird, but it doesn't take that long for you to adjust. If I'm just a mess and I'm constantly wasting time on all these devices and whatever, and then all of it goes away and I go sit in a dark room, it's uncomfortable. I feel these little desires and things, and it's like, I can't sit still. I need that stuff. I need to be stimulated constantly. But it doesn't take that long for it to start to adjust to where you throttle down, and then you can sit there comfortably and read a book or do something. And I've become very sensitive to my current state of that thing that I can't really name, the impulse thing, where I can be, if I remove these distractions and stuff, I feel comfortable to where I get little impulses and I don't act on them, and they naturally start to become farther apart to where I'm not getting it constantly, and they start to be directed at stuff that does not have instant gratification, where I suddenly get this impulse after a while of, you know what, I'm gonna clean the garage. It's been a while. I think it's time to do that. Like, that is just a thing that shifts over time. It's hard to explain exactly, but it's a very noticeable thing if you really pay attention. And that really is the main reason in my mind to try and separate yourself from your phone and computers and whatnot, is that this thing, the impulse thing, it changes over time.
I have nothing to add. Let's keep moving.
Okay.
Okay. My next one is make a ridiculous dream board. And it's kind of silly, but I did this recently because I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about this other podcast that they listened to. God. And on that other podcast, right, so this whole story could be...
This is like 4 podcasts deep.
Yeah.
To our listeners anyway.
Oh, yeah, and we're a podcast. Anyway, They were saying, this third podcast away from us was saying that when John Legend was younger, he and his friend, this could totally be untrue. I don't even know anything about John Legend. But anyway, when John Legend was younger, he and his friend kind of just joked around and like wrote stuff on the whiteboard of like, oh, John, you're going to win an Emmy and a Grammy, and oh, you're going to EGOT, I mean, yeah, whatever. You know what EGOT is, right?
From
Emmy,
context,
Grammy,
I do know.
Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, Tony. Anyway. And, oh, you're going to EGOT. Oh, you're going to win this award, that award, whatever. And they're just joking, just playing around, writing stuff on a whiteboard. And sure enough, one by one, he's crossed out every single one of those things that they wrote on the board, which totally could be a made-up story. I don't really care if it is, but it got me thinking about times in my life where I've done something similar. It doesn't have to be a whiteboard like they said he used, but times in the past where I've low-key, even jokingly, defined what I want to do in the future. And we could go through my entire past and sort of figure out how that happened, but that sounds boring. So I started doing this recently, writing down a bunch of literally the silliest, dumbest things that I think I could never ever do. Like if money was no issue, if I was younger, whatever, all of remove all of the limitations and just write it down. And when I went to do this, it was actually really difficult to just write a single thing down because you come up with all these reasons why you can't do it. You're like, oh, I want to meet this person. Well, that would never happen. I would, I'm just blah, blah, blah. You're like, just write the damn thing down. So I came up with this huge list of all this little stuff. Some of it's very achievable. Some of it is so ridiculous. But it's actually been, I did this maybe a month or two ago. And one of the smaller things was, I've done a lot of artwork for a lot of different people and places and whatever. But one thing I haven't done is a book cover. For whatever reason, never done a book cover. So I was thinking it would be kind of fun to do a book cover. So I'll just write that down. So I write it down. Later in the day, I'm thinking about like, oh yeah, book covers would be cool. And then I just sort of trail off and start thinking about, literature and writing and books and whatever. And then one of my friends kind of pops in my head and I was like, oh yeah, that guy, he's a writer, whatever. I haven't talked to him in 2 or 3 years. I should shoot him a text or something. So I text him, I get in touch with him. I'm just talking to him, like, just because I haven't talked to this guy in a long time. And within 10 minutes, he's like, hey man, I'm writing this book and you want to do a book cover? And it's like, oh my God, and I'm supposed to meet with him soon about it. And it could be that I don't do it or whatever. But just the fact that because I was thinking of this ridiculous thing I haven't done yet, I start seeing all these possibilities of how to get it done. And so I've started writing down all kinds of ridiculous things, one of which I can't even talk about because it's so cool. But it's just like all of these little possibilities start popping up, not because the universe is, giving back what I put out or whatever stupid nonsense people say about the universe.
Oh, it's the
whatever.
secret.
Right, but what happens is if you write these things down, your brain starts to see the patterns that connect to those things. So I don't know. You just start to recognize little things that pop up. You're like, oh, that's actually similar to this thing that I wrote down. I don't know. Does that make sense?
No, I like that a lot. The way I would kind of think about it is when we were talking about Pomodoro last week, we pitched our favorite thing about it, at least for me, was that it helps you get into a focused mode where you're very zeroed in on something. And then it also gets you to stop and take a break and get into dilated mode where you're seeing more, you aren't fixated on something. I feel like what you're describing is the ultimate focus dilation of, you're not even focused on the day or the month, you're focused on my entire life. And
yeah.
Let's just think about everything and start really backing up and looking for bigger connections. I like that a lot. It's a bit of a, part of it is almost fantasy of, oh, I could do this, I could do that.
Yeah, it absolutely is fantasy, but I've noticed a couple of them have started taking shape. And what it did was it started changing that weird hidden thing in my brain that determines what I actually want to do with the rest of my life and all that stuff. Like whatever secret compartment of your brain that decides that, I'm accessing that somehow. It's weird, but it's really changing the way I think about stuff and causing me to change major plans and sort of, I don't know, think totally different about things. So that's my second one, is make a ridiculous dream board. And I bet you it will be very difficult to write down some of the things that you want to do because they are so ridiculous, but write them down anyway.
Okay. I like that. Number 5, I think.
We gotta hurry up. Yeah.
I know. All right, this one will be quick. Number 5, take 2,000 to 3,000 IUs of vitamin D every day.
What? What are IUs? What are IOUs? And what does vitamin D do?
Units. It's just like a arbitrary measure. All right. We have not really delved into nutrition at all so far. We talked about sleep, which I would argue is somewhat along the same lines. We haven't talked about nutrition. And it's hard to talk about nutrition because everyone and their mom has violent convictions about whether or not you should eat carbs or whatever other thing. But we have to talk about it some because it matters a lot. In the same way that your circadian rhythm matters a lot in terms of building up that energy, the way you feel comes from what you eat and how you sleep and lots of other things too. But nutrition is really important. So I figure let's just dip our toes in a little bit. And I'm going to say that I recommend taking a vitamin D supplement every day. There are no magic pills. There
Except
are
vitamin D.
except vitamin D. There are things that are more important, like eating well and hitting your calorie targets and things like that. But we're going with zero effort, and it's pretty close to zero effort to just take a vitamin D pill every day. All right, now here, very briefly, I'll try to sum up why I'm actually recommending this to people. Here's the story of vitamin D. It has like a Paul Bunyan-esque fable around it. So humanity, for the most part, lived around the equator, if you go back a ways. Because it was warm and sunny, and it's a lot easier to stay alive when it's warm and sunny than it is when it's freezing cold. But mostly people live there. People were pretty dark-skinned, because if your skin is pretty dark, you can be out in the sun and it won't burn you alive. Right?
Yeah.
But as we all know, people don't really like each other. And so people tended to spread out, and they would spread north and south away from the sun. And as you get farther away from the sun, you don't make as much vitamin D, because the main way that human beings get vitamin D is from their skin, like being synthesized with sun. I don't actually know how that process works exactly, but apparently it does. And we believe that the main driver for people's skin becoming lighter was simply that they needed more vitamin D. That the reason why white people are around lighter skinned people is an evolutionary adaptation to needing more vitamin D in an environment where you don't have as much sun. That's the tale. So that kind of gives you this feeling of, wow, must be important, right? Now, everyone lives indoors and doesn't get any sun. And we go from a house to a car to an office building to a car to a house, and we're never outside. So nobody's skin is making very much vitamin D. So it kind of stands to reason that there is an explanation for why people's vitamin D might be lower than it ought to be. So there's that. But of course, who cares? That's just a fun story. Does science actually have any evidence to pointing in that direction? Like, should we actually take vitamin D or try to supplement or whatever? So if you search for this and you get people's take on vitamin D, you tend to find two camps. Like everything just splits into two camps. You have the vitamin D is a miracle pill. It's a crime that it isn't being put in our drinking water. You're insane if you don't take it. It'll cure every ailment you can think of. There's that camp. And then there's the reactionary of it's totally overblown. That's ridiculous. Of course not, blah, blah, blah. But the reason why there's the fanatic camp is that there actually is a ton of science that is able to correlate low vitamin D levels with illness for almost any illness you can think of. If people have cancer, they've got low vitamin D. If people get COVID, they have low vitamin D. If people, any illness tends to correlate with low vitamin D, which gives you this feeling of, holy crap, vitamin D must be so important. The objection is, okay, well, just because they're correlated doesn't mean that it's causal. If you're sick, you're staying inside all the time, so you're not getting any vitamin D. If you take that person and you wheel them outside and put them in the sun, you haven't cured them. They still have cancer, but now they have more vitamin D, so who cares? That doesn't necessarily mean that taking vitamin D cures cancer. Are you with my tale so far?
Yeah.
I know this is a tonal shift from the rest of the podcast, so I'm sorry, but
I just feel like at the end of this, the only thing people will do out of everything we listed will buy a bottle of vitamin D
magic pills
supplement.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone loves the magic pill idea.
Exactly. Well, then we'll get something. Okay. So science shows a strong, very, very strong correlation between low vitamin D levels and all kinds of illness. The real question is it causal? If you give people vitamin D and you raise their levels, does it prevent all these illnesses? Unfortunately, we don't have a ton of science on that yet. And there have been plenty of studies that have shown a null result, meaning you give people vitamin D and it doesn't really help. But there are a lot of studies, or increasingly studies, that are showing a pretty strong result for certain things. And again, it's very incomplete. We haven't studied everything. We haven't done a random controlled trial for every scenario of supplementing vitamin D, but it looks pretty promising. There was one paper that came out very recently looking at autoimmune disorders, and they did a very nice double blind placebo controlled trial giving people vitamin D and not giving them a placebo, and they found that there was a 25% reduction in symptoms of autoimmune disease in people that were taking vitamin D, which is pretty huge. That's 1 in 4 people that like had an autoimmune disorder, which is very serious or can be, resolved by taking vitamin D, more or less. That's not exactly what it equates to, but anyway, I think again we're wading into nutrition and it's very fraught with controversy and everything. Personally, based on me trying to keep up with different papers and things that are published in the science of it, I think that there's a pretty strong case for supplementing vitamin D because it's probably pretty low in most people, a lot of people. Now, if you're light skinned and you live near the equator and you're outside all the time, you probably don't need it. You can actually just get tested. I did. It's like $40-$50 for a test, and you can check your vitamin D levels. And mine were, even like in the dead of summer where I was trying to be outside as much as I can, intentionally trying to get vitamin D, I was still low. So I live in the Pacific Northwest, so that makes it hard, but still, it was low. Again, there's no magic pills, but I think of anything, there's a very high probability that your vitamin D is low, and it plays a role in mood and general well-being and all of that stuff. And I think it's worth doing. And in the same way that viewing sunlight in the morning won't fix your circadian rhythm overnight, if you take a vitamin D pill and you feel really great that day, total placebo. Nothing happened. You can't, it doesn't like fix you overnight. But if you bring your vitamin D levels up over the course of a month or two, it can actually start to make a pretty significant difference, we think. The end.
Okay, sure. Take some vitamin D. I feel like you should get some points doxed from today's episode for suggesting a magic pill, but
okay. I'll accept that. So, I tried to.
You did good. You did.
I tried to hedge as much as I could.
Okay. All right. Moving on. Next one is sign up for something. In all my life, the only good things I've ever done have been for some sort of external thing that had to get done. Relying on your personal motivation day after day to do a thing, whatever it is, indefinitely, really well, that it just doesn't work. At least in my experience, I've never been able to just be self-motivated enough to accomplish anything great over a long term. It's always been when I've signed up for something or dedicated myself to a specific external thing. So sign up for something if you don't feel motivated.
I would, my spin on that would be the environment that you're in is critical. And it's a huge source. Like, you reflect the attitudes and feelings around you. And if you're surrounded by people who are really jazzed about working out, you probably want to work out. It's just contagious in that way. And I don't know if that's exactly what you're saying, but
yeah. And when I say sign up, I don't just mean sign up. I mean, you can sign up for stuff, but do something with someone else. Commit yourself to a real concrete thing. I just started doing this challenge with one of my artist friends. We're trying to draw a picture every single day based off of a classical song. So we take turns picking the song, and then we have to draw a picture based on that every single day, which has been really difficult so far. And there's a lot of days where I really don't want to do it, but the whole thing has been extremely rewarding, and it's something I would never, ever do on my own or be able to keep up with on my own. So just having that other person doing it along with me gives me a whole lot of motivation that I simply could not just find in myself. And technically we're not signed up, but we have agreed.
Well, we know what you mean by sign up. Emotionally sign up for something.
Yeah, like you signed up, quote unquote, to become a StarCraft Grandmaster. Different conversation, but you dedicated yourself to that exact thing. You didn't just try to be good at StarCraft, indefinitely. Try to improve indefinitely. Right. You signed up to do an exact thing. That's what I mean by sign up.
Which I did do, by the way. We haven't actually talked about this yet, but I did it.
Yeah, he did it.
Yeah. Top 200.
Yeah.
We're going to talk
Okay,
about that soon.
next. Yeah.
Yeah, all right. And actually, I think it's worth talking about environments in it for its own podcast because that's a whole thing, and I think it's a massive, massive part of motivation. So yes, placeholder for future discussions. All right, number 7, which is my last one. When you need a break, walk around. And I think there's some subtlety to this one. Did you know that over a third of your brain is dedicated to visual processing, like handling your visual system?
I did not know it was a third, but
Over a
that
third.
yeah, that's pretty
That's
cool.
crazy, right? It kind of makes you think that vision is really important, at least a major part of us. So we talked before about how one of the things you're trying to do in to perform well or to get really good at something, like the puzzle storm theory, that learning to dilate your gaze and see more and like be able to go between fixated focus and dilated gaze. There's a very part of that is almost metaphor of like you need to be able to think and see the bigger picture mentally, but there's also a very literal sense of being focused with your gaze versus dilated with your gaze. So when you're working on something, like say on a computer and you're coding or you're doing art or painting a picture, anything, you're focused. Yeah, I mean your eyes are literally focused on a point and they're held there. And that actually, I can't remember all of the different brain circuits that are involved, but it doesn't matter anyway, at least to us. The point is that there are different parts of your brain that are involved in focusing on something and being dilated, like having your gaze open and seeing everything around you without some intense focus on a particular point. One of the best ways of doing that, of getting yourself into dilated gaze mode, is what they call self-generated optic flow, which is a really fancy term for walking around. So if you just walk around, it puts you in that mode where you're using different parts of your brain and you're just simply seeing a lot of stuff around you. And I think it is, in again, back to the cat example, where you have these moments of intensity, but you also need to relax and get out of that. One of the best ways, I think, of trying to relax and allow your mind to disengage from being very focused is walking around, like having that self-generated optic flow. And what tends to happen if you aren't intentional about it is, say I set my Pomodoro timer for 25 minutes and I work and I'm focused, and then the timer dings. I'm like, cool, time to waste time on the internet or go Google this thing. And I'm not actually getting out of focus mode. I'm just focusing on something else for a while. And it has a tendency to build up fatigue, like very serious fatigue. And I actually want to talk about fatigue as its own episode too, because I think it is one of the biggest factors in performing and maintaining motivation, is managing fatigue and keeping it from building up too much, because it can affect you for long after the fact. But I think the best way to mitigate fatigue is to walk around. Also, it'll help lower your insulin response to food, which is helpful too.
Okay.
And it helps you see sunlight, which helps your circadian rhythm. So it's like triple whammy.
But you don't need that if you're taking your vitamin D, right?
That's not
Just kidding. Okay.
great.
All right, you done with that one?
Yep.
Okay, my last one. This almost works opposite to what I was talking about with the ridiculous dream board. Check the closet. A lot of days when I am feeling very unmotivated and just, doing the rounds of watching, Mr. Beast on YouTube and just watching a lot of YouTube and wasting time.
Sure.
The only way I can seem to get motivated is to sort of re-find myself. That sounds kind of silly, but the best place for me to do that is to just check the closet, because in my closet are all these things from the past that really kind of defined who I am, and the reasons why I do the things that I do. So I just start looking through them and revisiting the past and sort of thinking about this stuff. And then all the reasons why I do the things that I do come back to me, and I really want to do them again. So that's what I do when I feel very unmotivated. I'll just start going through some of my older stuff. And it just reminds you why you are the way you are and the reasons why you really want to do those things that you wish you were motivated to do.
I like that. That's actually I mean, in a sense, when we talk about motivation, it's only meaningful if you're directing it towards something that has meaning to you, that you value or you care about. If you're just kind of swept up with all the distractions of the world and you're just pouring your energy into whatever presents itself in front of you, I mean, you can just pour it all out all over the place.
You forget why you're doing anything.
Yeah.
You just kind of follow whatever's in front of you. Oh, that's a cool video. I'll watch that. Oh, right. I'll go lay down, or I don't know, whatever you do when you're not motivated. But yeah, you forget who you are, why you do anything. And you're like, oh, I should be doing this stuff that's supposed to mean something to me, but I don't remember why it means anything to me. So I find the answer in the closet. Check the closet. Okay. Are we done? Are we ready for the challenge?
Quick recap and then the challenge.
Okay. Yeah.
I got a recap?
Yeah, you're doing the recap.
All right. Here's my best take. You need energy to be motivated. Fix your circadian rhythm. You need to not have all your energy sucked up by devices and distractions. Really, the more you can eliminate distractions, the better. And it's not even an in the moment thing. You might go an evening not being distracted and think, cool, whatever, was that big of a deal? But it shows up the next day.
Yeah. Look for ways of, well, with your to-don't list, find ways of removing those reoccurring, very frequent distractions that come along every single day. Because
yeah, I
really think the more distractions you remove, the only thing you want to do are those things that you really want to do.
Yeah. I forgot your term, the to-don't list. I love that. Right. So use the to-don't list and as a way of removing distractions. That kind of the major offenders are your phone and Reddit and stuff like that. Get rid of those things. Practice your focus. That kind of goes hand in hand, but just again with the fire hose thing, being able to take the energy that you're trying to build and keep it directed towards something. Absolutely key, and something you just get better at over time. The dream board, the looking at your entire life. Yeah, the ridiculous dream board. Being able to dilate the way you're thinking towards the huge picture you said, a huge part of motivation. What can be demotivating is getting stuck, almost fixated on day to day, where you start to see the bigger picture and you start to get inspired and interested and stuff like that, right? So the dream board. Take vitamin D. It's probably important. But it goes without saying you shouldn't take medical advice from two random dudes on the internet. So talk to your doctor, is what everyone says, and literally no one does. But vitamin D is pretty safe, probably fine. Sunlight in the morning. Fix your circadian rhythm. That's part of the energy equation. You got to get that sorted. And walking around. Self-generated optic flow, if you want to sound pointlessly intellectual.
Right. Yeah. Just
right, what's it?
Right. Yes. Sign up for something or commit yourself to something specific. And, well, maybe this goes more into discipline, but sometimes you don't feel motivated, but you should do it anyway. And as soon as you start doing it, you start feeling motivated. I know.
Yeah.
It feels weird, but
yeah,
that's just the way things work sometimes. Oh, and then my last one is check the closet. Remember who you are.
Remember who you are.
Yeah.
Right.
Remember why you want to do things. Okay, the challenge. The challenge is to wake up at the same time every day for the rest of February. It is, when this comes out, it'll be February 7th. So we have until February 28th, or March 1st. You have until March 1st to wake up at the same time every day for the rest of February.
You pick the time. Could be 5 a.m. Could be 11 a.m. It's up to you. If you need a couple days to kind of ramp up, I think that's fine. You know, if you're an hour off of what you want or 2 hours off, and like that's fine. But you know, within a couple days, get there. I'm just gonna go cold turkey tomorrow.
Yeah,
My
me
sleep
too.
schedule was really good, and then it got totally trashed because I got kind of sick and weird things happened. So I'm cold
What
turkey in it tomorrow.
what time are you doing?
8:15.
8:50. Okay, I'm gonna try.
Don't
for
judge.
5.
Don't shame people for.
I am 8:15. I mean,
What are you
come
a
on.
5 a.m. person?
I'm going for 5:30. Yeah,
Why? It's still dark.
because I have to wake up, do stuff, get ready for work, and then drive an hour all the way to work, and then start my day. So
Well, that sounds like a problem in and of itself.
it's also going to be really difficult, and it's already getting late when we're recording this. But yes, we'll both be doing it. I'm choosing 5:30. You're choosing 8:15. And then we
Cool.
will be doing an episode on this on whatever day.
First week of March.
Yeah, whatever. Okay. Do the challenge. Goodbye.